my name is Breslin, and right now we are at my farm, Breslin Farms. We were thinking big when we named it. Multiple farms, just the one farm, which is a small 80-acre grain farm in north central Illinois.
I'm Fresh Roberson. I use they, them, and she, her. I am the director of Chicago Bread Club, and I'm also the owner and farming chef for Fresh and Together. I'm a diversified veggie farmer right now with, hopes to be a future grain farmer. And in that work and where I am in Chicago, there are a lot of people who are caring about food access and food security work. And in those conversations, it's mostly fruits and veggies, local fruits and veggies, local fruits and veggies, local produce, And so that's what I hear a lot. And so to me, I think about staple crops, I think about grain, I think about calorically dense, especially when I'm thinking about folks who are food insecure.
My dad and I started farming about 13 years ago. And with the goal of growing local grain specifically. We were both working on different organic vegetable farms. We got this idea, wouldn't it be cool if we could make bread with our own grain that we grew? It grew from the idea of eating the food that we grew and contributing to the local grain economy. And for some reason in 2008, 2009, Chicago was not on that train yet. Since then, the local grain economy has just blossomed. And it's really great. But our thing that we started doing that a lot of other people weren't doing in this area was growing dry beans, which is part of how Fresh and I connected.
The Chicago Bread Club is all about sharing the art and knowledge of bread, as well as promoting and expanding racial equity in the regional grain economy. And as the pandemic hit, we really shifted a lot of our work because we weren't meeting in person. So we shifted a lot of our work to providing access to local grain. And I live on the Southside of Chicago. So a lot of what that work looks like is how do I get local grain and staple crops into the hands of my neighbors, community members, folks on the Southside that don't have as much access to local grain. But, beans and staple crop is our community loves that. So we started getting red beans, and we started getting black beans from Molly and Breslin Farms and, getting them out in community.
One of the things that we encountered pretty early on in our farming journey was that we were really excited about growing heirloom beans. And then we would take them to the farmers, to a farmer's market to see how they would sell. And everybody would be like, oh, those are so pretty. And then they would not buy them. They would buy the thing that they were comfortable with, which was the black beans or the red beans, And so at some point we were like, these heirloom beans don't produce as well. So we really have to sell them for a lot more money in order to make it work out. And we just want to grow food for people. We want to grow food that people can afford, that we can price affordably, so that we're moving calories in the local ecosystem.
And so that's a lot of the work we're doing is how do we get local grain into the community, especially on the south side of Chicago? How do we make it free and accessible to those who need it, or really affordable for those who have the means and ability to pay? And then we are continuing to work on how do we make that work sustainable? And so how do we make it worth it for the farmers and support the farmers, and also kind of moving funds through our system to so that everybody can keep this going?
And I think that as a farmer makes me feel like, oh good, you're not just asking to take, right? You're trying to make this a sustainable, supported system. And when we think about farming, we're thinking about generational. We're planning by decades, we're planning for soil health, we're planning for environmental impact, we're planning on a long scale. And to have partners who are working on the consumption end, who are also planning on a long scale, I think makes a big difference to me.
In our relationship, one of the things I admire so much, especially as someone who's aspiring to be a grain farmer at the scale that you are, is watching you do that and raise a family and be a woman farmer and all of these things that we don't get told and see often in in like the grain economy, and like being able to kind of see that, and like, you know, it feels like I know it's possible to do that work, and to kind of see how you approach that work is always, you know, I think that's a key to like how we build relationships through Artisan Grain Collaborative, how we build relationship and community, and like those things feel really important.
I feel like we've also been able to have conversations where like I could be like, here's what's going on, so this is possible and that's not going to be possible, you know, like we can talk about like the realities of our lives and operations instead of just having to be like, you know, maintaining the facade that like everything is wonderful, you know. We can talk about, you know, like, well, like there was a drought, so that didn't get planted, so I'm not going to have any of that till next year, you know, when I grow the next round.
You know, purchasing from farmers, right? Whether that's at farmers markets, whether that's looking up your local farmers in your area who are growing staple crops, whether that's going to your grocery store and asking for them to be supporting local farmers and getting that on the shelves, or asking your farmers markets why there's no, you know, local grain farmers, or how to get that in. I think one of the big things that folks out can do is just being a demand for what they want to see, and like raising their voice around what they want, because that's kind of one way I think about enacting change. So
finding the right scale, helping find the right scale within the community is important. But also just, you know, making the food, baking the bread, choosing if that's what you have in your fridge, that, or your freezer or your pantry, that's what you use, you know. So we need to work on every level, I think, to be supporting the local grain economy.